Well, hello everybody. This is 100 Visions Guy, as you probably know, because you saw the little logo. Anyways, we're going to talk about unit testing, and in particular, we're going to talk about JUnit and creating unit tests for a program. We're going to keep it simple, okay? We're not going to get all fancy schmancy on y'all. I'm going to start by creating a new class based on a project that we've been working on, a caught speeding program, where we're going to write, what we're going to do is we're going to write a method that will determine whether you get a ticket or not. And the goal here is for you to see how we run and create a way to test to see if our code is working right. Okay, so it's called caught speeding, and I'm going to give it a number 2 on here because I've already created one that has that name. I am going to do a main method. And so I'm going to check that, and I'm just going to click finish. So it's going to create a Java class that we're going to use to test. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you, one, how to write a method, but really the focus is going to be on how we test it out. Okay. So, and I'm going to start just from scratch. Okay. In our main method, we're going to call another method that is going to determine whether someone gets a speeding ticket or not and how much the fine is. So the idea here is it's going to check to see how fast you were going, and if you were 60 or over, you're going to get a ticket, okay? But if it just so happens to be your birthday, then you get sort of a 5-mile-an-hour discount so that you could actually go 5 over and still not get a ticket. So, of course, a lot of times police officers don't pull people over for going 1 or 2 miles over, so we're going to use 60 as our general idea here. By the way, this code sample does come from CodingBat, and so I do not claim this, but I just want to walk you through the unit testing aspect of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to create what's called a static method, and the static method is going to be called get ticket. So it's going to get a ticket fine, or you could call it get fine, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to use get ticket just because that's what I originally named it. Oh, before I do, and I want to point out, we're going to make it Okay, so what we're going to do here is basically this is going to be a method that's going to return an integer. It's going to be 0 if you have no ticket, 500 if you get a $500 ticket, and 1,000 if you get a $1,000 ticket. And it's based on the range of speed that you do. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make it static, and it's going to return an integer. We're going to call it get ticket, and it's going to require 2 values. Okay, we're going to get a value for speed, and we're going to get a value like how fast were they going, and is it their birthday or not. Now, in a good method, many times you may need some information. So the first one is what was the speed. And when you write a method and you're going to take parameters, and these are basically inputs for our method, we need to give a variable name for it. So we're going to get all fancy. We're going to use VEL for velocity. Actually, we could just go ahead and write it out like so. It's not going to be too bad. So we're going to get the velocity, and we're going to get another one, and it's going to be an integer, but we're going to treat it like a Boolean value. We're going to call it is birthday. Okay. We're going to make it an integer. It's going to simplify our testing. And the idea here is that if it is the birthday, you need to give a 1. If it's not your birthday, you're going to give it 0. So in our method, the first thing you'll notice is anytime you create a method that is not a void method, it returns a value like int or string or whatever. When you do that, it expects you to return a value. And until you return a value, it's not going to like it. So the value is going to be the fine, and that's going to be an integer, okay? Okay, actually, we're going to go ahead and initialize the fine to 0, okay? And then at the end of our function, we're going to return the fine, okay? So at this point, we have a function, and we basically have it returning a value. In this case, it's going to return 0 no matter what. Okay, and what we're going to kind of do, we're sort of practicing what's called test-driven development. And in test-driven development, you actually write the test before the method works. Okay, so now in order to do this, you're going to need to have the JUnit JUnit plugin for Eclipse. I've already downloaded it. I got it from a tutorials point exercise. I'm going to post the link on the description of the video so you can get that if you want. You download it, you extract the plugin into your Eclipse plugin folders, and then here's what's cool is you just right-click on what you want to test. So I want to test this class, so I just go into the Package Explorer, I go into the SRC, I find the .java file I'm going to test, I right-click, I choose New, JUnit Test Case. So what we're going to do is we're going to find out, does this code do what it's supposed to? And when I do that, if I have JUnit test, I've got my little JUnit test case window. And right here, it gives the name of the class that we're dealing with. Now, we're going to keep it simple, so we're not going to use any of the method stubs on here. I can save that for a later tutorial. Okay. But there is a next window. And first of all, it asks what class is going to be under test, and that's the name of the class, so we're good. I'm going to click Next. And now I can see there's my class, but look, I've got a main and a get ticket. I want to test get ticket to see if it's going to work or not. So I check that, and then I click Finish. Now what this is going to do when I click OK is it's going to create a way to test that method. And right now, it has all of my code ready to go, and I'm going to test the get ticket method. And at this point, if I test it, it's going to fail, and test-driven development starts by failing anyway. So if you fail on the first run, you've succeeded in test-driven development phase 1. Okay? So you should run it, and if it doesn't fail, you have a problem with your test case code, and that needs to be fixed. It shouldn't. It should do exactly what happened here. Test-driven development, we start by failing. Then we adjust to get ourselves to not fail anymore. Now, in order for you to understand the way this test case is going to work, I need to probably explain how the test get ticket works and what the actual details of this particular method are. So let me go ahead and post that. Okay, for those of you that want to know what we're doing here, this is the actual goal of this particular method. You're driving a little too fast, a police officer stops you, you write code to output the fine incurred as an integer. So if you get a $500 fine, you get 500 is what it returns. If it's a $1,000 fine, it's going to return 1,000. If it's 0, it's going to not return a fine. If your speed is 60 or less, there is no ticket, it should return a 0. If the speed is between 61 and 80, the fine's going to be $500. Anything over 80 miles an hour is going to be a $1,000 fine. However, if it is your birthday on that day, your speed can be 5 miles an hour greater in all cases. So this is the challenge, right? So this is what the method's going to do. In order for this to work, we need to know two things. We need to know what was the speed and is it their birthday, okay? So that's what we're looking for. The other thing is for this assignment, for my students, I put here some sample inputs with expected results. So for example, if you're going 60, it doesn't matter whether it's your birthday or not, you're not going to get a ticket. If you're going 61 and it's not your birthday, you are going to get a ticket. If you're going 65 and it's not your birthday, it's still $500. But if it is your birthday and you're only going 65, you get a ticket of 0. So hopefully that makes sense. So what's going to happen is if you think about it, there are 3 general cases. You either are going to have no ticket, in which case the method returns a 0, or you're going to get a $500 ticket and it should return $500, or you're going to get a $1,000 ticket and it should return 1,000. Okay, so you're looking for 3 different values, but there's a lot of different variations as to what should the ticket be. So it's a classic conditional execution sort of test, right? So we've got all this information. So we now know some sample inputs, expected outputs, and why we're doing what we're doing in the code. So we're going to go back to the method in here. And now you should see you've got this int velocity, int is birthday. You create a fine and you return a fine. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to call it We're going to call it in the main method so you can test it out. And of course, this is incomplete, right? Because no matter what you put in, you're still going to get 0 out. Apparently, the cop is just like giving everyone a pass today. All right, but anyway, if you look here, ticket equals 0, ticket equals 0, ticket equals 0. So, just like a broken clock is correct 2 times out of every day, because you could get a 0, we could end up passing a test. So sometimes what you could do is purposely fail at the beginning by giving it a different value that you wouldn't ever get. Okay, like fine equals, negative 555 or something. And then that would be a value that no matter what, it's going to fail. In fact, you probably want to do something like that. Okay. Now, we're going to go ahead and call this function in here. And in order to call it, we're just going to use a system.out. We're going to use a console print line. Or print. Your fine is, and then I'm going to put the little $sign. I'm going to put a little plus here. Now, what we're going to do here is I'm going to hit enter. And on the next line, we're still in our system.out. I'm going to call getTicket. And when I call it, I want to pass it some values. So the first test, I think we said you're going 60 miles an hour. And we're going to, and we're going to say it's not your birthday. So now you're probably wondering, why would he do an int here? Well, we're going to use 0 to represent no or false. And we would use 1 to represent true. Okay. So here's the code. We're going to test it just in our caught speeding code. So we run, we check our output. It should be negative 555. And what that means is when we run our test, if we create our test, we want to test it with these 2 values and see if we get the right result. Now, we already know we're not, okay? But we're going to go ahead and do that as a matter of formality, okay? Now, in here, we just have an automatic fail because we haven't implemented anything. Well, at this point, I actually have. I've implemented some code in here, so I want to test my code. So to test, you do what's called Assert Equals. And now, Assert Equals should get basically what you expect to get. That's the first value. And the other value is what you are going to, you're going to run it. So in order to run it, we write caught speeding to dot. And when I put that dot, you should see getTicket show. So I click it. And click it or ticket or click, no, I forget. Click it or ticket, there we go. All right, we're gonna caught speeding, we're gonna give it a velocity. Now, if the velocity is 60 and it's not your birthday, the result should be 0. So the left-hand side is the expected result. The right-hand side are our test, right? So we're testing getTicket with these 2 known values. This is called a known value test. And we're just gonna run it. And on the left, it should still fail. Yes, we have a failure of 1, red error, okay? Now, we're going to do one more thing. We want to get our test to actually succeed. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to change that fine to 0. And now I'm going to go back, and we're going to save my changes. Don't forget to save. And actually, we can run it, and you should see your fine is 0. So now that we're getting 0, this test should work in this one particular case. So we run it, and now we have a green bar. That's really good. That means we succeeded. However, it doesn't mean we succeeded in writing the function to do everything it's supposed to, because we tested with the value we're going to get no matter what, because we already returned a 0. So in my next video, I will show you creating a bank of tests to test out all of our different conditions called edge cases. So stay tuned for that.